Well, it turns out the Bucs didn't have to go that far for an offensive coordinator, just a couple doors down from Todd Bowles' office, and they hire their passing game coordinator, Josh Grizzard. They're getting younger at offensive coordinator. I think he's, all of 34, but lots of experience. He was 7 years with the Miami Dolphins, 3 different head coaches, which tells you how valuable he was in the various roles that he had down there. And Steve, we talked about this. I mean, this was going to be a move for continuity, right? Whether they interviewed 3 coaches out of the 6 that were with the Los Angeles Rams that had a similar offense than Liam Coen, but at the end of the day, they took a guy that's already on staff, same terminology. He was the biggest part of their game planning for third down, which they were number 1 in the NFL at over 51% conversion rate. So, look, it's a young coach, and he's never called plays before, and that's always a concern. Dave Canales had not really called plays since high school.
It sounds familiar, right?
Yeah, and hopefully he'll be better than Dave Canales because I think the offense is better. I think schematically they're better. I think Baker Mayfield has more answers at the line of scrimmage, and I think that was the big part. So, it's very hard to predict success with somebody who's getting his first chance, but I understand why they did it. And in talking to Baker Mayfield and Tristan Wirfs and some of those guys over there at the Pro Bowl, as I was just this past weekend, they all really are comfortable. Like that's this. I came away from it thinking, oh no, we're good. Like they hated losing Liam Coen because he was exceptional last year. Some of the ways it went down didn't excite them, obviously, but the fact that they can enter an OTAs and mini camp and all those things in the off season, starting right where they left off, right, in terms of terminology and schematics and how can we push this thing forward from where we ended the season, which is a light years ahead of where they began the year. I think that just talking to Baker Mayfield, who's had now 8 offensive coordinators in 8 NFL seasons, if you can believe that, even though this is a new offensive coordinator, he feels relieved that, for 2 years in a row at least, he's got the same system.
Well, and that was kind of why they hired Liam Coen last year, is it was similar to Dave Canales' system. So they're really trying to get that continuity. It also explains, it's not the only reason, but why the Bucs denied Kevin Carberry and other assistants the chance to interview in Jacksonville and try for the same jobs, because with keeping Grizzard here, they want to keep as much continuity as possible, including all the assistant coaches. So, it's, I don't know if it's the best possible outcome for the Bucs. Time will tell, and we'll see how good he is. All the Bucs players that you've heard from at this point are saying the right things, and we obviously know Todd Bowles talked to lots of offensive coordinators as well. Knowing the offensive staff or the offensive players on this team, you had your pick of a lot of different offensive coordinators around the league that would love to coach Mike Evans and Bucky Irving and have that offensive line and have Baker Mayfield and all the weapons that Tampa Bay has, and as good as that offense was this year. And this is who they chose and felt is the best path going forward. So, you're all in on let's keep this party going. The same thing that, set records for Tampa Bay this year, and you went from basically worst to one of the best rushing attacks, et cetera. I mean, it's good news for the Bucs.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And you're right. I mean, time will tell. This guy hasn't done it. He hasn't had that job in pressure situations and all of that. The one thing I'll say about Grizzard, like you dig into him a little bit. First of all, this is an Ivy League kid, right? He played at Yale. He went to Yale about, I don't know, like 6 years. He was in grad school there. He was grad assistant for almost 4 seasons. And, so he's a smart guy. And then you look at his career when he got into the NFL in Miami. 3 different head coaches came through the Dolphins, and he worked for all of them. And that's rare, right? Usually guys have their guys, form their own staff. But Grizzard, I guess, is extremely adept at breaking down film, being able to catalog stuff, and also just creative. And the fact that he's worked under a bunch of different systems, borrows some from Mike McDonald, et cetera. And when I was talking to Baker, you hear these things like, what is a passing game coordinator, right? It's just a kind of a fancy term for what exactly. But he did work very closely with the quarterbacks and the receivers. And Baker said, he ran the third down meeting. Like that third down was his deal. And I've not seen this since I've been here, is a team that leads the NFL in third down conversions at over 50%, 51%. That's an incredible number of conversions, right? So if he was in charge of that, critical down, much of it in the passing game, then you got to believe that that he knows offensive football. And again, I think the bigger thing is that in this system, unlike Dave Canales, and Canales did a nice job. I think his strength was being the optimist bully, as Baker Mayfield called him. He was always positive. Every day, was going to be the best day they could possibly have. But in terms of like the scheme, yeah, it was, some outside zone runs and things like that, but he didn't have the volume of plays or the sort of the audibles that were necessary to get them out of bad plays. And in Liam's system, they have that. Baker's very comfortable operating it. He's done it for a year. He'll pick it up, where they left off last season. So from that standpoint, Josh will have a bunch of, things that Baker can get to. But he also knows the personnel, and Liam Coen came in here last year, Steve. He didn't know Mike Evans. He didn't know Bucky Irving, who was new to this league, obviously didn't know Jalen McMillan, didn't know Chris Godwin, who was having the best year of any receiver in the league when he got hurt against the Ravens, and didn't know how good Graham Barton was going to be at center, had no offensive line. If he didn't know anybody, right? But he knew a scheme. He had bounced around a lot himself, and he had taken that, from the Rams and from Sean McVay, and he installed it. And, lo and behold, they were a top 5 offense almost in every category. And that's hard to do in this league. And usually when you do it, you go deep into the playoffs. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they didn't do that. Washington, benefited from the turnovers and things like that they got to clean up. But I think that if, continuity wins in this league, and it's been hard for Todd Bowles. And the worst thing you can, if the worst thing you can say about Todd Bowles is he consistently hires guys that are going to become head coaches. I mean, what are we talking about? You got to be wildly successful, right, to get that opportunity the way the last 2 guys did. So maybe in a perfect world, Josh sticks around for more than one season as an offensive coordinator. But if he doesn't, it means they knocked it out of the park. They knocked it out of the park. And I can tell you those guys in Orlando, anyway, the Pro Bowlers that I talked to with Mike Evans and Tristan and Baker and them, they think that they can be, and I heard Mike say this, and he kind of stepped back and thought, wow, he thinks that Josh will help them get to the best offense in the league. I mean, that's what they believe they can be. So, again, proof is in the pudding, but if those guys have that much confidence in somebody that we don't know that well and haven't heard of and really haven't talked to all that much, then you have to believe that they're right, that they know this guy knows his stuff.
No question about it. And, I'm guessing, along this process, Todd Bowles talked to Baker Mayfield, talked to Mike Evans.
He did.
Talked to Tristan Wirfs. All these guys about, what they thought of Grizzard, what they thought of the other guys they've brought in. It's possible Baker even talked to some of them.
Baker knew him because he was in L.A. with a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. But they want to make Baker as comfortable as possible. He had a phenomenal season. Need to cut down some interceptions and some turnovers, some fumbles. But other than that, he had a great season. The offense was tremendous, and you want to keep that going. So, you have to trust. For those who don't like Todd Bowles and still wish that Liam Coen should be the head coach, that's past. Todd Bowles has hired 2 great offensive coordinators, or really good. Canales and Liam Coen both got head coach of the year. You have to trust that he's making another good hire here. Now, time will tell.
Yeah.
And, we'll see come, training camp and all that in the preseason and then into the regular season.
Yeah.
But, do you have a reason to doubt the hire at this point? I don't think so. I mean, now, he's never called plays before. We saw Dave Canales. It took a while for him to figure out that pattern in that. Mm-hmm. Even Liam Coen had to get better as the year went on.
He did, yeah.
So there is, is it going to be, is this Chip Kelly going to the Raiders and from day one, an experienced play caller? No. But he knows the talent. He knows the system. He knows what worked last year. He's going to have to learn how, the intricacies of play calling. But there's enough talent in this offense to get through that to a point where he's going to hopefully become a really good play caller.
Yeah, and Chip Kelly, by the way, $6.5 million to be an offensive coordinator with the Raiders. I thought Dave Canales was going to be, or
You thought Liam Coen was going to
Liam
get a
Coen
big
was going to make 4.5, and it's like, whoa, Heidi's paid. Well, for about a week. I mean, I think Chip Kelly might be making more than Todd Bowles, and I'm not kidding about that. Hell, he might be making more than Pete Carroll. We don't know. So the Raiders are putting out the money, and Tom Brady's in charge of a lot of that.
How about Pete Carroll hiring Chip Kelly, who they had many battles at USC and Oregon,
right?
And then they're in the same division as Jim Harbaugh, who was at Stanford during all that time.
Well, and yeah, exactly. Michigan, Ohio State, you got all that going on. Well, so yeah, I Chip kind of, it was weird because he left UCLA as a head coach, went to Ohio State just as an offensive coordinator, wins the Natty, and then cashes in and goes back to the NFL. I don't know. I think Chip has learned a lot from his Philadelphia days. He had some pretty good offenses there, obviously, when he had Deshaun Jackson and Michael Vick and that. They broke up the band there a little too soon, maybe. But they also kind of caught up to some of his college stuff. Remember, he was trying to run 75 plays a game. He's going up tempo and everything. And that sounds good, and it's great as long as you're making first downs. But when you don't, your defense is playing a lot of snaps. But Chip has gone more to more balanced. He ran the ball a lot at Ohio State, maybe too much against Michigan. That's why they lost. But he's not the same guy that he was, in his first incarnation of the NFL.
But I also think as an offensive coordinator, he may be better than he's as a head coach too.
Might absolutely. A lot of guys, he's a different cat, right? Like he's different when you talk to him. He's probably a little quirky in front of the room. I'm not exactly sure, but he won 10 games 2 years in a row, I think, with the Eagles too. It wasn't like he was an abject failure, because he wasn't. They just, like I said, they kind of broke up the band a little too soon, and and that kind of hurt him, obviously. But no, listen. The great thing about this team, when you talk to their best players, which is of course the guys that are at the Pro Bowl minus Lavonte David, who should be there, they still have this quiet confidence about themselves. I can't explain it. They feel like they missed a good opportunity a year ago, or this past off season or postseason, when they lost to Washington. That was a close game. They didn't execute early on. They couldn't get off the field on defense. I think defense had more to do with that loss maybe than the offense, but you can't erase that jet sweep fumble that absolutely led to the go-ahead touchdown. And even though the Bucs were able to tie it up, they messed up again on offense down there near the goal line, had to settle for a field goal. So, close doesn't matter in the NFL. It really doesn't. And there's only one team, next Sunday that's going to be happy about how their season ended. Everybody else is going to be disappointed. Maybe especially the team that loses the Super Bowl will be disappointed. But they know that they have it in them. They know that there's still a good cast. And it's an interesting mix because you have some older players now, obviously, with Mike Evans, and we'll see if Chris Godwin comes back or not. Baker's played 8 years. You know what I mean? Like he's not the youngest quarterback in the league anymore, and that's probably a good thing because he's got all those experiences. But Tristan Wirfs is got some years behind him now, still in the prime of his career. So they have a lot of guys that are kind of like just perennial Pro Bowlers, like in the prime of their careers, and then they added the Bucky Irvings and the Jalen McMillans. And if you think about where those guys ended the year versus how they started, I mean, Bucky Irving only started 3 games, and one of those was a game that Rachaad White couldn't play at New Orleans, and they went crazy. You still have Sean Tucker, who didn't play very much. So this is still a team with a lot of young pieces that showed up last year, and then you add to that, and look, there's no secret they've got to really add to the defense and find a game wrecker on the outside that can rush the passer, and they got to find maybe another inside linebacker and another corner. They have a lot of needs to shore up that defense, but this is still a very competitive football team that has a lot of pedigree, and you talk to them and everybody's about winning. There's not a ton of me guys that are looking for numbers and things like this. And so I think Bowles is back. Continuity of coaching should help them, but there's a big question mark at offensive coordinator. You got to see just how good this guy's going to be, but he's a smart dude and everybody seems to like him, and we'll get to know him a little bit better. I think he's probably going to be introduced to the media on Thursday, it sounds like. So it'll be maybe midweek or beyond when we have a chance to actually talk to him. But he's worked for David Cutcliffe at Duke. I mean, he's been to some really great places throughout his career and worked for some really good coaches. And everybody that I've talked to or that I did talk to, especially over the weekend, really believed that this was the right hire, that this was the guy that they know is got a chance to become a really good offensive coordinator. Now, since they've got somebody to replace Liam Coen still wanted some of the Bucs coaches, man, which is just incredible. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys, please go see our friends at Brightling Boutique. I was looking at our website, Steve. They have a beautiful ad up there for the Brightling Boutique. They got the beautiful Chronomat watch that is the Buccaneer watch. There's a special collection of 32 NFL team watches celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary this year, but it's a limited edition. So, hey, they're advertising it. That would tell me there's still a few left. You have to see these things. It's got the team colors in the face of the watch and also the logo or the helmet and everything to commemorate each team in the NFL. If maybe you're not a Bucs fan, maybe you're a Jags fan now, maybe you're a Miami fan or whatever team you root for. Go to Brightling Boutique. You're going to love the store. Fantastic customer service. Look, they're used to dealing with all kinds of celebrities and professional athletes. You're going to see a Buccaneer or two if you hang around long enough. Those guys go in there a lot too. And they're going to treat you, though, just like you're one of the celebrities as well. Spend some time, find the perfect watch for yourself, or how about for your wife or for your girlfriend? They have a beautiful collection of women's watches that are both gorgeous and durable. If your wife's on the go like mine with the kids and everything else going on, these things are durable, but they're also great looking. They have tons of different colors of beautiful wristbands for them. So check out our friends at Brightling Boutique, International Plaza Mall, and make sure when you go there, you tell them that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. I got to give it to Liam Coen, Steve, from this standpoint. Look, nobody was happy the way this thing went down, right? Even to this day, we talked to Baker and those guys, and Baker said he left, when he started getting the text messages, of course, he had seen it on social media that Liam had jumped ship and decided to go to Jacksonville. He goes, I left him on red the way he left me on red. He's like, I didn't get him back to him right away. And then they FaceTimed everybody, and I guess the offensive linemen had their chance to kind of scream at him for a little bit, and then at the end of the day, they were all very happy for Liam, and nobody can begrudge the guy with the opportunity he has and all of that. But what's interesting is that Coen tried to reach back to the Buccaneers and ask for permission to interview, i.e., hire, because he knows these guys very well. Wasn't just an interview; he was going to hire these guys. Offensive line coach Kevin Carberry and their assistant offensive line coach Pagucci, which both those guys. Now he'd been with Coach Pagucci for a long time. He goes back to when I think he coached him at UMass at one point. The Bucs assistant offensive line coach did. So, I'm sure that Liam's thinking, well, those guys will want to come with me, and now, he's not supposed to have contact with them. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Of course, he wasn't supposed to have contact with the Jaguars either. Once he, agreed to stick around in Tampa. But I think the fact that he had known them for a while, and he probably felt like, hey, these are good coaches. They might be loyal to me, and I'm going to try to build my staff. The Bucs said no. In fact, from what I understand, they said hell no. Okay, so. But I got to hand it to him, man. He was like, well, I'm going to ask anyway. And I don't know exactly what he thought would move Jason Light and others to say, oh, sure, take our best coaches. And let me assure you, too, that these are two of their best coaches. I mean, first of all, it's hard to find a great offensive line coach. Like, that might be one of the most valuable assistants you have on a staff, when you think about all that you have to get done there. And very often you don't have the same five guys every week, but it's a tough job. Technique is so important in the NFL. Most of these guys that come to the NFL haven't pass protected. They've been looking to the sideline at the cards, and they don't have to read defenses and all of this. So there's a lot to learn, an awful lot to learn. And I think that to me, Kevin Carberry's been great. Brian Picucci has been fantastic, and that's the reason that this offensive run game that was last in the league 2 years in a row, went all the way to third overall or fourth in the NFL. I mean, they created space for these running backs. And yeah, the running backs got better as they played in this system, and especially Bucky Irving, to have 1,000-yard rushers in the first one since 2015. But these guys on the offensive line are well coached, and those are really important staff positions. And so we talk about continuity. I know there was no way Jason Light was going to let either one of them out of here. And I don't think that'll be a problem because both of them signed contracts with the Bucs, and they know that they're under contract, and this is a lateral move. Now, if Liam Coen had said, "Hey, I want Kevin Carberry or Brian Picucci to be my offensive coordinator," even though he was still going to call plays, the Bucs could not stop him from taking that job. But that's not what he asked, and so they're going to stay here, and that's just another reason why I think talking to Tristan Wirfs and other that. They're going to benefit a lot from having their two offensive line coaches and two of their best coaches on the staff, period, of any kind. And then I also found out when I was over at the Pro Bowl that Larry Foote, who interviewed for the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator's position, he is back. He is coming back to the Bucs as he was a co-defensive coordinator. We'll see what they call him this year. I suppose just defensive coordinator, even though I think Todd Bowles will still call the plays. And then Thad Lewis, their quarterback's coach, should be back as well. So
let me ask you one question on the coaches and Carberry and that. And obviously, if Liam Coen's asking permission to talk to them, he knows them. I got to assume that they both said, yes, we'd go. We'd like to go there. Or we're happy to go, continue to coach under you. Now, at the time, they also didn't know who the offensive coordinator in Tampa was, so there's some uncertainty there, of course. But is there hard feelings from those coaches, or do those coaches want to go there, or are they happy to stay? I know they're under contract, and I'm not saying the Bucs should have let them go at all, but Liam Coen's probably not asking permission if he doesn't know that they're interested. Now, like I said, they didn't know that Grizzard was going to get promoted, and they may be thrilled with that and happy to stay. No idea, which is why I'm asking you. But, is there worry about that? Or are these guys, I mean, look, they know the talent. They had great success this year. Most of the band's going to be back together. So you would think that they're fine with it, but you never know.
Well, I think you're right in this sense that I don't think Liam Coen asked if he thought the answer was going to be no from them, right? Like, you'd have to know that. I mean, going back to the day, when you asked the girl to the prom, did you not know that she was going to say yes? Because if you didn't, it was going to be a really embarrassing situation, right? So I think he knew both of those, especially in the case of Picucci, who he's been with forever. I think he knew that if they were granted permission, that they would have come with Liam, because they came in with Liam, and so that would have been an opportunity for them. Now, this is professional football, and it works both ways, right? You sign your name on a contract. This was both of those guys' first year, and they knew it also was not a promotion. This was going to be a lateral move at best, right? They weren't going to go to offensive coordinator or run game coordinator, anything like that. So, given the fact that Coen didn't promote them, so to speak, he just said, "Hey, wish you could do for me what we did in Tampa last year," and they were probably like amenable to it, like, "Yeah, I'll do, I'll work with you." The other thing I think about is this: you figure that Coen, unless he just absolutely is god awful, right? He's going to get more than a year or two. You would think. I mean, you would think. I think Liam will have some success next year, maybe a lot of success. Certainly getting the quarterback turned around and all of that, right? Todd Bowles, I don't know. Like, I truly don't know. Like, there was a catch-22 this year where there's a scenario if Todd Bowles does not win the division, that maybe Todd Bowles is fired and Liam Coen's your head coach right now. I mean, that's kind of where they were at. And then they won the division for the third straight year under Todd, and got in the postseason. Probably should have beat the Washington Commanders, but they didn't. And I think if that doesn't happen, that maybe you move on from Todd and Coen is your guy. But the fact that Todd is still here doesn't mean he'll be here a year from now. So if I'm a coach and Liam's just gotten the job, I'm gonna think, well, they're gonna give him at least 2-3 years. I don't know if we have 2 or 3 years with Todd Bowles.
Well, not only that,
but
those coaches have 1 year left on their deal, presumably. No, most
yeah, they're going to have to make a decision probably after next year.
But if they're going to Jacksonville, they're getting at least a 2-year deal. I mean, so there would be job security there. But at the same time, there's a chance, even though they had a year left on their contract, there's a chance that if they hired an offense coordinator from outside, that they would want to have a whole new offensive staff. And those guys might have been out of jobs. So, I mean, I can understand where they would say, yeah, I'd be interested, because they didn't know what the future was, because Grizzard wasn't hired yet. But, but I am curious. And look, they're pros. They'll do their job. They had great success this year. You got to assume they like the guys and what they did. But part of me wonders if they wanted to go or preferred to stay. And we may never know that answer.
We may not. And they may not have been asked. It could have been shut down at the GM level.
It probably was. And because of the way the exit was handled.
Right.
I'm sure it wasn't asked.
And I don't think they were surprised listen, you're not supposed that would be tampering, right? Like in its purest form. You can't call a coach that's on another staff under contract and say, hey, you know what, Kevin, I've got this job now as a head coach. I want you to come with me. Like, you can have none of those discussions.
No, but as Liam Coen was starting to interview and his name was, made known that there were teams interested in him, he could have been like, hey, if I get a job, are you interested in coming with me?
Oh, those conversations probably happened last year.
And there's no tampering with it. I mean, you're all working for the same employer at that point. Is that really tampering?
No, but I mean, since he got the head, he couldn't pick up the phone. At least he's not supposed to.
Yeah.
Now, if we see a tampering charge fall out of the weeds here in the next couple of weeks and they dock the Jaguars a draft pick, we'll know more, right? It's kind of
my guess is those conversations were had weeks ago, as far as hypothetical. Hey, if I get a job, would you be interested in, coming with me?
Well, I mean, because here's the thing. We've known since before the end of the season that he was going to interview for the Jaguars job.
Yes.
Like we talked to him about that while he was still preparing, for the playoff game. And so everybody has known now that the Jaguars had an interest and there was a possibility he would get it. So absolutely, he's had those discussions at minimum. But he didn't put anything on the table that would prevent them from being blocked. And I would, almost like too what Liam told me when I talked to him in Jacksonville. And with Liam, it's a different deal, right? Because Liam went from an offensive coordinator that would have made $4.5 million, all the way up to like about 12 a year, which is incredible. Plus, he gets to be in on choosing the general manager, which I think only Kyle Shanahan has done in recent years. And so there was a no-brainer in terms of like the opportunity, versus what he had. But these guys, they're not moving up the ladder in terms of like, going from offensive line coach to offensive coordinator or head coach or anything. They're just merely doing the same job they're doing now, only doing it in Jacksonville. And just like Liam told me, he goes, you don't think I wanted to coach Baker another year? It's like that would be a blast. Like I was excited about that. Like I'd love to have him another year. I think that's kind of the way these guys would feel. Like, you don't think I want to coach Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke and, all this offensive line, Graham Barton, that was so good a year ago? Of course I do. I love those guys. We had a lot of success together. I want to push it further. But, your friend called, or your former player called in the case of Pacucci. But I cannot fault the Bucs. These guys are under contract. And they'll do a good job. They're not going to be better and let their foot off the gas because Liam is in Jacksonville. And depending on what the length of their contracts are, they could be free agents next year. It just depends. And they'll get an offer to stay if they're good. And if they're not, they'll be like, hey, enjoy Jacksonville. But I don't blame anybody for saying, I don't blame them for asking, although it seems a little awkward. But I certainly don't blame the Bucs for telling them, hell no, you're not taking any of my coaches. Like we just went through a bad episode with you. And these are also valuable coaches. Like, I don't know that there's really, other than maybe, I mean, the coordinators clearly, but maybe the defensive line coach or the secondary coach. But like, I don't think there's a more important coach on the staff that's not the coordinator than the offensive line coach, because you affect so much, right? And pass protection, run blocking, the schematics of all of that, and developing depth, and in case you have injuries, and guys playing more than one position. It's so important to have that front five be solid, and that's why I think the work that they did a year ago, the proof is in the pudding. It couldn't just be play calling. It had to be coaching. It had to be technique. It had to be better players moving guys off the line of scrimmage, and that's what they did. And so, for as much as people are kind of bent because Coen is gone, you should be just as excited that they held on to their two offensive line guys, because those are big factors in their success a year ago. So I went over to Orlando. Can I just say this? Is like, there is no worse highway. I'm willing to say this with conviction. I've traveled a lot of places. I haven't driven everywhere, but I'm willing to say this. I will put up I-4 between Tampa and Orlando against any 75-mile stretch of highway in the United States for being the worst interstate in America. Seriously. It's incredibly bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's up there with what, I-10 or I-5 in LA.
Oh.
Yeah, it's I-4 is just
It's
avoid at all cost.
Absolutely. And yet, like, I put on the Waze, the little app, and it was telling me to go the back way up 75, cut across on 50, whatever. And I was like, I just don't feel like doing that through these little towns. I'm just going to take I-4. What a mistake. What a mistake when you're trying to get there before, 12:15. I made it with time to spare, but what a parking lot that was for about 15 miles. So I got to go over there and see these guys, and I think they told some interesting stories about finding out that Liam wasn't going to be there. And first, they when they went down to the Bahamas together with their guys, they thought, all right, well, this is a good thing. Like, we got continuity. Liam's back. It was sort of like a celebration in some sense. And then they found out the way we did, which is to say, it was reported versus somebody giving them a phone call. And then the phone calls started a day later. And Baker was funny. He was like, I'd been trying to get a hold of him. A lot of people have been trying to get a hold of him. No one could. And he said, and then all of a sudden he started blowing up my phone. He goes, and just like he kept me on red, I kept him on red. Like, I didn't get back to him right away. And then they had a FaceTime, and to a man, I think Baker, the offensive lineman, kind of like really got on Coen for leaving. They were and they were happy for him, but they were kind of like made it hard for him to break the news. But you can see how much this guy did for them, and it's certainly going to be a loss. But Baker said it. He's like, look, man, for his wife Emily, for the kids, you have to take this job. And that was never the case. The problem was just the disappearing, going off the grid, all of that, and it affected Baker a little bit too. He didn't like being played with his emotions that way, being told that he's back and then finding out that he's not. That was kind of a roller coaster for those guys. So, at the end of the day, they're still going to be friends, and they don't play Jacksonville, at least in the regular season, for about 2 years. It's going to make for an interesting joint practice if that's what happens. This coming season or off season, we'll see if Liam sets something up. It would be their turn to come to Tampa. But aside from that, they were having a good time. It's interesting because a year ago, I thought about the contrast. Like, a year ago, I went over there. Mike Evans was a free agent. Baker Mayfield was a pending free agent. Tristan Wirfs didn't have a new deal. But of all those things, the biggest thing was, who is there going to be the quarterback? I mean, Baker had this great year, but it was a one-year deal, and he was waiting to see if they were going to get Mike back before he made a decision. And then they did do Mike, and then that brought in Baker, and so on and so forth. But what a contrast to this season, where they're all under contract, and they're all new fathers. I mean, it was really cool to see, both Baker and his wife Emily, and Tristan and his girlfriend each had babies, I think, within 2 weeks apart. And Tristan has a boy, Baker has a girl, and you can go on Twitter or X or one of those places, and you can see the two little ones, kind of being held by their dads, and Baker's little girl is like grabbing, uh, Tristan's son's hand and all this kind of stuff. So unlike the previous year, they were all out by the pool. Mike Evans brought his family. He said the coolest thing was just sitting around watching the kids swim, and what a difference a year has make. I mean, you come into the league, you're a young man, you're not married, you don't have children, and now they have such a commonality and common experience that I think it brings those guys closer, because they're watching their babies play together and stuff like that. So that was a cool experience for all of them. And Baker's very proud to be back there. He's the only Tampa Bay quarterback that's gone to 2 Super Bowls, which is saying something when you start, reading the list of quarterbacks that have been here. While they were Buccaneers, that is, including Tom Brady. He went to a lot of Pro Bowls, but did not go to the Pro Bowl, but just I think one time, and I think he turned it down. He was named to the Pro Bowl. I'm pretty sure he didn't go. So the game itself, they do all these games, and they get points for tug of war and these different things. The NFC won. Baker came in the last quarter, lit it up. He did not get the MVP. I think that went to Jared Goff, but regardless,
Yep.
it was fun had by all. One thing I learned just while I was over there, Steve, and I had not thought about this, and I found out just talking to Mike Evans. So, flag football is going to be an Olympic sport in 2028.
That is correct.
When the Olympics come.
And the NFL is a big push behind it and supporting it.
Absolutely. And I had not heard this, but Mike Evans wants to play. He wants to play and would love to be a part of the Olympic team. He goes, look, 2028, it's 2025. It's still 3. If I'm not retired by then, I'm probably really close to it. He goes, but man, it'd be great, to be in the Olympics and have that Olympic experience, maybe win a gold medal. So yeah, when they start having tryouts for the receivers from the NFL to be on the USA team in flag football, look for Mike Evans to raise his hand. He'll be up there in years. He'll be like 30. What is he? 31 now, so he'll be about 35 years old or so.
Yep.
I don't know if he's still going to play at that age, but he certainly could play flag. And so that was kind of cool to find that out.
Did you watch any of the broadcast? One funny moment. I didn't see a lot of it, but the punting competition. So
a little bit.
The punter was from Jacksonville, the AFC punter, and Ryan Clark at one point goes, "Duval."
Oh man,
it was very quiet in the background, like it was subtle, like you had to know what it was to catch it. I was busting up laughing.
I mean, Liam is now tried to run that back or take that back and done different calls of it's obviously Duval, it's not Duval, which is what he did the first time. But man, that is such a meme right now that it's almost embarrassing. In fact, it is embarrassing. I didn't make a big deal out of it because I was just like, well, he's kind of dorky anyway, but he did obviously put the emphasis on the wrong syllable there, and people are all going around doing that, so that's a shame. But yeah, it was interesting. Pro Bowl. Baker played well, came in fourth quarter, all of that. They won the tug of war with the big guys, Vita Vea on the rope there next to last. And so the NFC won the Pro Bowl games. Eli Manning over his big brother again. Peyton cannot get on top.
Is that 3 straight for the NFC now? I think
3 in a row. I think, yeah. Those guys are great too. They're mic'd up. It's fun to watch and listen to all those great athletes. I to be honest with you, I kind of like, there are times when there's a little more contact than there should be, and I hold my breath because the worst thing you could ever do is find somebody who gets seriously injured, tear a knee or something like that. They're still competing and they're going up for the football and they're going off their feet. And when I see a guy go off his feet, I think, oh man, you could come down on somebody, roll the ankle, break the ankle, dislocate the ankle, turn the knee, tear the knee. Like, it's very scary. And I know they don't think about that because they're just out there running around making plays, but I do. I saw Robert Edwards one time. It was an New England Patriots running back, and a good one. I was in Hawaii. I believe it was, what year would this have been? 1999, perhaps. The Bucs had been in the NFC Championship game, lost 11-6 to the Rams. I go to the Pro Bowl, and they had at that time what they called a beach game, and it was a rookie believe it was a rookie beach football Pro Bowl game. And on Waikiki Beach, they kind of coned off an area in the sand where the rookies, some of whom weren't on the team and many of whom were, they competed against each other, NFC versus AFC. And I believe it was Robert Edwards from the Patriots blew his knee out so bad they were worried about arterial damage. They thought maybe he was going to lose blood flow, much like Alex Smith or something like that, and that he might lose his leg. That effectively ended the beach volleyball portion of our Pro Bowls. It never happened again. But I got to seeing those guys running around out there in flag, and it's like any athlete, right? Like they're going to get after it, man. And when you get after it, guys might get hurt, and it would be a shame to see some guy get hurt in the Pro Bowl. But they pulled it off, and the NFC won. And so, Eli's got bragging rights again for quite some time. And finally, Steve, I didn't see the whole game, but I did see where the Lightning, with a late goal by Kucherov, kind of throws one in off the leg of the defender. They managed to take the game into overtime the other night, and unfortunately, they got caught in a change and gave up a breakaway. They did get a point, but they lost. And this, I mean, you said they didn't play that well. I couldn't really tell. It seemed like they got a lot of shots. I think at this point, obviously the offense is the bigger problem, right? And I think at this point, those guys might just be gripping those sticks a little too tight, you know?
Well, that's been going on for a few weeks. I mean,
yeah.
it's the inability to finish and score, or every goalie looks like they're the best goalie in the world, a Vezina Trophy candidate against the Lightning. They're snake bit right now, scoring wise. All 3 goals they gave up on Saturday night were bad plays on the Lightning's part, turnovers or bad line change. I thought the Islanders deserved to win that game. The Lightning got lucky to get a point.
Agreed.
And kudos to them for getting a point on that game. But they're going to need to play better. And now they're playing Ottawa for the next 2 games at home. And Ottawa,
great, right?
Ottawa's right there with them in the standings, battling for that spot. I mean, these are 2 4-point games against the same team. These are almost like playoff games, kind of.
Yeah. How many they got before the All-Star break?
Well, there is no All-Star break. It's the Four Nations tournament.
Oh, that's Four Nations. That's right.
This is the
right.
final week. So there's 2 at home against Ottawa. Then this weekend they're at Detroit, at Montreal, and then they go on a 2.
And then they go on the Four Nations. Okay. Yep. And of course, John Cooper is coaching the Canadian
Cooper
team
is coaching. Hagel, Sorelli, and Pointer on Team Canada. Gensel's on Team USA, and Hedman's on Team Sweden.
Yeah, I heard where Coop was saying these guys, especially after the last road trip, could really enjoy a little bit of a break here, and obviously a bunch of them are going to get that. So hopefully that recharges them a bit. But yeah, it's just been kind of a weird year. Like sometimes they play well and they don't win. But the common denominator to me feels like they don't score enough goals, and it might be because after you get past the first 2 lines, there's just not enough, kind of extra guys, in those third and fourth lines that can pick up the slack. You're asking Kucherov and those guys to do so much of the scoring. You got to get a contribution for some of those other lines, and it's just not happening right now.
Yeah, they do need to address, and the trade deadline is coming up in about a month. They need to address probably another top 6 forward to play in the Sorelli Hagel line, and they, or add some depth scoring in the bottom 6, because there's just not much coming from there right now.
Right, and I don't know. We don't talk much NBA, but a seismic deal in the NBA.
A couple of them, but the real big one was Luka for Anthony Davis.
Right. Dallas.
But De'Aaron Fox going to San Antonio, Zach LaVine going to the Kings. That's a huge deal as well. Not quite as big, but.
What's really weird to me, I saw the press conference that they had with the, with the GM and I guess it was, the head coach is sitting there, and they're trying to explain in Dallas why they would trade Luka Doncic. And it turns out that only the GM knew that this was going to occur. It was so secretive that he didn't tell anybody else. And I got to believe, and when I look at the deal, and listen, I mean, who knows how Luka's going to play when he's reunited? He's going to be with LeBron now. Anthony Davis goes to Dallas, and there's some other players and picks too. But it feels like to me and I don't know the health. I don't know that we don't know everything, but if you're not willing to tell your head coach Jason Kidd that we're trading your best player, a transformative player like Luka Doncic, like you can't be proud of that deal. You know what I mean? Like you're almost in a way saying, "Yeah, I knew you would fight me on this, and that's why I did it without you knowing." And Kidd sat there like a guy that did not want to be at this press conference because he didn't know it was going to happen, and I could tell just by the body language he was not happy about it. Like you know what I mean? Like it wasn't a great idea in his.
Well,
I don't want to speak for him,
right?
But
not only that though, and I'm far from an expert on the NBA, but Luka Doncic is considered one of the generational type players.
Absolutely.
You're not going to shop him to get the best deal.
Right.
I mean, that's the other part that just seems, I mean, I know you don't want it to get out because if you didn't trade him or whatever, but like, who knows what you could have gotten back? Who knows what some team would be willing to give up for him?
Right.
You know, and if you do it that secretively, the other part for Luka. So the way, and I don't fully understand. I know the terminology in that. He was eligible to sign a supermax contract this year.
Right.
For 5 years for $345 million or right around there. Because he was traded to the Lakers now and is not playing for the team that drafted him and all this other stuff. Now he's only eligible for a 5-year, $228 million.
Ouch.
That's $116 million.
Guaranteed. Yeah, that's a lot, man. That's not a good development for him.
And you know, but it's nothing he can control. It's part of the CBA that the players in the league have negotiated.
Yeah, you just don't want to be a victim of it. But yeah, I know, I hear what you're saying.
But I mean, he might now. There are ways possibly he can make more depending on if he only signs a 1-year deal. And there's some other. I was reading some stuff on that, but short term, you know, $116 million possibly of contracts he's missing out on after this season.
That's a lot. It's a lot, and I just on the surface, it just feels like Dallas got fleeced a little bit, but you know, I have to see how healthy he is, how him and LeBron work together. I can't believe that LeBron's not behind a lot of this. I can't. I don't know why he wouldn't be at the forefront of it at some point. But yeah, it was a shocker. It was one of those deals where you go, wait, what? They're trading who? So yeah, swap superstars. So the Bucs are going to introduce their offensive coordinator probably on Thursday, I believe the tentative schedule is probably sometime around noon or 1 o'clock. So we'll have a chance to talk to him. Get your mailbag questions. I got a bunch of mailbags over the weekend. We can go through some of those tomorrow. You can still send them to us on X at SportsDayTB. You can reach me on X at NFL Stroud, or my email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. And remember to go see our friends at Brightling Boutique. You can check out the Chronomat watch for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, limited edition, 104th year anniversary of the NFL. That's on our tampabay.com sports page. If you click on sports, you go to tampabay.com. You're probably going to see an ad for Brightling Boutique. It's a great store, terrific products, men and women's watches. They've been in business for 140-something years. They've been at International Plaza Mall now for over 5. Check them out, and it's make sure you tell them when you do go that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Thanks for listening. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.